Hi guys, welcome back to Just Design. I'm Gabby, and today you are in my class for Photoshop's Basics Part 2. Today we're going to go over flat color, how I create dimensions, how I create shadows and light, and value. This is a very important step in creating images that are dynamic and professional. First step is you want to create a layer and you put it underneath everything that you've already done. So we've created this sketch of this jumper and we've already went over that. So today we're going to add color to this horse. Now, if you have a reference photo, if you see a color of the item that you're trying to draw is, let's say, you're trying to draw an orange, but instead of drawing the orange, you could draw the orange pink, purple, blue, yellow, red, whatever the case may be. You're not confined by reality within art, so it is easy to create images that have different colors, different values, and different textures within your drawing versus if you were to do it in real life. See the exact same thing, only from your own point of view. So for just that mere explanation, I'm not going to color in this horse a normal horse color. Instead, we're going to create a horse that is pink today, because it's very on brand for me. That is my so we have brightness, contrast levels, curves, and exposure. I want to show you what each one does. These are ones that you can use on photos and on your drawings, which help maximize them and make them look better. Brightness is self-explanatory. You can make it really light or really dark. Most of the time it's more subtle. So I like to do just a little bit lighter sometimes. Contrast is how contrasted you want the colors to be against the other colors in the image. So I like a nice dark bay, which I'll put it right about there. And that is brightness and contrast. The next one, and I'm going to delete these layers as I go along, because we're not going to use them. We have levels. So here is your sliders here, and you also have a lightness slider down here. So this is already putting it in RGB. RGB stands for red, green, and blue. In each image, there is red, green, and blue. It is what makes up every RGB screen. And in printing, you work with CMYK. So, but we're in digital art, so we're using RGB. That's what screens are made of. And this is your middle tone, your middle hues. These are your darker hues, okay? These are your lighter hues. Down here, it will take your whole entire image and make it lighter, brighter, or darker, and more shadow. This one up, and it's only affecting that one layer. Okay? So that is how you would use RGB. You can go into each channel itself and work on just the reds or just the blues. And that's how you would use levels. It's just using the levels in the image. All right. Next thing we have is curves. Curves is kind of like levels, only it's on an arc. So you can see where your lights are and where your darks are. If you go below the curve, it gets darker. If you go above the curve, it gets lighter. lower on your axis, darker, okay, when you go below that line. And when you get above that line, you see that diagonal line? When you go above it, it'll get lighter. It's the same thing. The higher you go on your axis, I can't say it. Axis line. This line. You know, on a grid. That's how curves work. It works within a grid to show you the different levels of an image. All right, and then finally, exposure. Exposure gives you sliders, just like in the other ones. You've got light exposure, which will really make your image extremely light or extremely dark to the point where it's almost black. Offset, which will make it kind of like this fuzzy white. I don't know how to explain this other than it just offsets the exposure. And then the darker you go, the more silhouette it's going to give you. That's how I would explain that. And then your gamma correction is how fuzzy it is. Yeah. So that's your exposure. So those are your basic corrective adjustment layers. Those 4 right there. Next, we have color. So we can solely work with color. We can work with the vibrance of an image. The vibrancy of the colors, how bright do we want them to be? The saturation, how saturated of the colors do we want? We want more dilute, black and white, or do we want extreme to the max brim color? Do we want that offset to be extremely high and vibrant, saturation really high, or do we want our saturation to be lower and our vibrancy to be a little bit darker, you know, a little bit more gothic looking, I would guess. That's how I would describe it. And then next we have hue and saturation. Hue and saturation lets you work with colors, specifically the colors in the image themselves. So saturation on your reds, on your red and gray line here is just the normal image saturation, just like the other slider. This one is much of the same, only it is a little bit stronger, I feel, than the other one. We also have our hue, so that's what's going to change a color in an image, and it will make it really different. So if I wanted to make a pink horse, and I'm a newbie and I really don't know how to visualize a pink horse in my head, I could use my reference photo still. I would come down here to colorize. I can bring up the lightness of the horse a little bit or darkness of the horse a little bit. And I think I will make him a little bit lighter just so I can see a brighter pink. So let's bring in our pink hue that we would want to see. And how saturated of a color would we want? Okay, so now my horse is pink. And if I click this box, this will put it on the layers below the layer that this is on. So it'll only affect the below layers. So it's only affecting these layers down here instead of all the stuff up top, above it. That comes in handy when you're trying to use lighting effects on only a few things, but not the whole entire image. And then color balance. This is how we can see our our cyan, magenta, pink, magenta, yellow, or our red, green, and blue. So this is how you can change an image more into print. Say I want this all to be able to go into a printing system if I needed it to be optimized for print. Use my CMYK sliders for that. But I could also go into the red, green, and blue here, and this is optimized for a screen, optimized for social media, the internet, phones, tablets, TVs, computers, all screens operate off the same basic technology, red, green, and blue. So that's your color maps. Now I wouldn't go as extreme as I just did right then, but as you can see, I was just trying to explain the different ways that you could use that. This is your black and white filter. If you want to deal with certain colors in the image and you want to make them lighter or brighter, darker, you can do that in the black and white filter to create a perfect black and white image. You have photo filter, which is basically you can come in here and create different filters. And it's kind of cool to play around with. And channel mixer, so mix up your colors for you. I don't ever use that, I'm gonna be honest. Never really needed to. And then color lookup. This is just, I'm not even gonna get into this because it's really complicated, complex, and even I am not well versed in that specific channel, so you don't really even need to bother about these last three. I normally use these top four. These ones are more advanced. I definitely think that it's more advanced level down here. And then finally the ones down here, the gradient map, threshold, posterize, invert, and selective color are more advanced levels, and they're harder to explain, but this will give you a basic map of the colors and where they're at in an image, which can be easier for beginner artists because you would get to see exactly what part of the image do certain lighting effects hit. I'm actually going to leave that there so we can use the posterize to find the different areas of the image, the different colors within the image. Threshold, it will create a perfect, almost perfect silhouette for you. And it brings out just the basic, extreme basic parts of an image to show you where certain things are being held, certain lighting is being held. I'm also going to use this. We're going to put it down here. Oh, not that one. My bad. We're going to put it here, and I'm going to take the saturation or the opacity way down. This is great for new beginners as well because you can see where the shading would be and where the lighting would be. So I have that at 16%, and now I can see exactly where my shadows are being held. My gradient map is exactly what it sounds like. It's a gradient. So if I want to add a pink gradient to my horse, that's where I can do it, right here. And I could put it down on that level, and I can put the opacity down. And now it's even more pink than it was before, only this time it's a gradient. But I don't want to do that with this image. And then finally, selective color. You can find an exact color of red, blue, and green, and cyan, magentas, whites, and neutrals. So you can pull out the exact parts of an image, basically. And yeah, that's pretty much all of the different images, the different adjustment layers that you can do. And then finally, solid color. That will make your whole entire image a certain color. So I'm going to make it red because I try to find a good base. It's almost like primer for your image, only in the digital sense. So we're going to put this nice red. I think I want to make it more magenta purple because I want a nice like starting point to kind of work off of, because it'll make my images and my colors more vibrant once I put my brush strokes down. So that's a good starting point right there. You could do a gradient or a pattern, does the same thing, affects the whole image, as you can see. That gives me a gradient, and this gives me a pattern within Photoshop. So I never use patterns because I just bring in images or create my own backgrounds. I don't really use that. All right. That was a lot of jibber jabbering. And now we can get started. So when we look at this image, we can see exactly where things are being held because we used all those adjustment layers. So we're going to go up to layer 1. We're going to name this flat color because that's what this is called, to get a baseline color for an image. Flat color. This isn't the shading. This isn't the is someone coming in? This isn't the shading or lighting of an image. This is strictly the main color that you get a vibe off of this entire image. So for this flat color, I would go for the mid-tones. So the mid-tone of this horse is giving this color. And I can pull this into my color picker, and I can work with it from what I see too. So this is the exact color that I picked. That is the mid-tone for this image, okay? But I can make it lighter, darker. I can change the hue and the color of it. I can do anything I want, but the cool thing about using the eyedropper tool is that I can get the exact tone, and it doesn't matter what color I use, it'll be the same tone, which would make the same flat image. So we're doing a pink horse, so I'm going to go into my pink, and that's going to bring out a little bit of purple. So, and now I would find a brush that can create a soft flat color. So I like the Wimblet blocking brush for this. Again, you can download Photoshop brushes, and I'll go over that in the more advanced part of Photoshop basics. But again, this is just the basics of part 2, so we're only just now getting into color and color theory. I'm gonna make a whole I can come in here and basically just map out the lighter parts of the image. So in here, I got some lighter parts up in here and in here, and we got some parts here. This is not me trying to be pretty. This is literally just blocking in where there's light and where there's shadow. And it's really simple, and it's not that complicated. So if we get a mid-tone between the two colors, we can come in here and kind of blend them a little bit together. Okay, so we got our flat color underneath, and that's already helping blend these two together, but still it isn't perfect because there's no shadows, there's no depth. Okay, so to create depth and to create shadows, we have to get a darker color to create shadows in. And I'm not even blending this stuff, guys. This is literally just blocking out color at this point. This is what really levels up your art game, I think, is when you realize that nothing has to be perfect, but as long as you get the basics down, you can pretty much create anything and make it stand out unique to you. Because if you see shadows where other people may not see shadows, and lighting where other people may not see lighting, that's how you create an image. So it's all about the hues, the saturation, the placement, and just like that, I've created a more 3D look, a more 3D effect. So we can go into a masking layer here. And I could come in here and refine it. That's where this background comes in handy, because even if I get rid of some of the color that is on my clipping mask, that's already just bringing more vibrancy into the horse's appearance. All right, so this is more of a gray horse, kind of dull, not really giving what I want. All right, so I want to make it a more hot pink horse. I can come in here and start blending in these colors and adding in more color as well. But what I'm going to do is bring down my opacity on the actual color, and this starts to blend. So I'm blending in, I'm keeping it within the lighting where I see it on the map here. See it on the map? It's lighter here and here, and darker throughout here. We're just going to refine those muscles a bit. That's fine. I'm going to come down with my darker color and start bringing those shadows back in. And right now, it looks really bland because the background is the same color as this horse. But once I take it and put it into a different background, you guys are going to be like, wow, that pops like a lot. It does. That background helps because it's masking those opacity layers. But it's good to work with this off, because you can, with the background off, because then you can strengthen those areas that are weak. But when we turn it off, right, you could also do without turning on a new layer. You can do this, Control I, come in here. Make sure it's on hard round, because that's really what's going to give you the most payoff in this situation. And watch this. Watch how this just completely transforms. it is. All right. And my clipping mask isn't perfect, but you can see that that has extremely different looks from what it did before. It looks a lot more vivid. The face isn't extremely detailed, but I also want to show you this. So we have our flat color, but it looks more purple than pink to me. So I'm going to go into my hue and saturation, and I can bring more color into it. I can change the color to anything I want. So say I want it more pink, I can come in here, lighting, bring it up, bring the lighting back up again, and now I have a pink horse. I mean, that's a really pink horse. But what I would do, because maybe I like the color in certain areas, but I like the original color in other areas. So I'd put it down to that layer, okay, so it's not affecting the other layers on the image, right? And go into our clipping mask, use a soft airbrush, soft pressure round brush, this basic brush, okay? And we can paint in our original colors in certain areas. And let the vibrance and hue work in other areas. Image. So that really just changes the dynamic color. And then finally, another thing we can do to really just make this look on a whole nother level is quite easy. I like to use white and black.
It will really help this image. Okay? Yes.
And go back to black. Obviously the horse's tail
needs to be a lot darker. The horse's cannon bones, darker. The horse's shadows on the beneath part here, so the barrel here on the bottom is dark. On the top line here, it's dark. And this muscle on the neck right here is dark. Our chest bone is deep in depth. And our nose is usually darker, and our eye is usually darker up there.
Ear tips as well. Okay. So we've added our black and white. You can come in here and turn down the opacity. Okay. And then we can also come in to screen. And that helps as well. All right, so now our image has basic color to it. All right, this is basic color. This is what I wanted to go over in this episode. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you learned something. If you have any comments, you can leave them in the comments box below. If you have suggestions for anything in Photoshop, leave them down below. The next episode, I'll be discussing the color theory, because for more in-depth work on this, we would have to understand color theory. And we will be using the same image next time as well, so that way it's easier to see my concepts. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you have a nice day. Thank you.